I was watching the latest news on TV when my wife got home from work late. Boyd, you won't believe who hired me to defend them today. David Bridges, I replied. How do you know? You're on the news, I pointed to the TV on the wall. She looked at the TV and there she was. Sure, it was an old picture that must have been taken from the firm's website, but it was in plain sight. She was the latest addition to David Bridges' legal team. That didn't surprise me. She was one of the top celebrity defense attorneys in the country before I demanded she quit working 100 hours a week. I wasn't some Cro-Magnon who didn't want his wife to work. I just wanted to see her more than once a month. Next chapter. That was 2 years ago. She was defending a senator accused of murdering one of her staffers. I could tell he was guilty as sin, and I was sure she wasn't sure of his innocence either. But that didn't stop her from flipping through all the evidence in an ungodly amount of time to find even the slightest hint of something to exploit. Eventually, she got the jury to set the bastard free. The district attorney decided not to re-sue him, which shocked the entire country. On the third day of 3 consecutive days of sleeping in her office during this trial, I handed her the divorce papers. Finally, she asked what she could do to avoid losing me. I advised her to quit her job. Even when we were in our 30s, we had more money than we could spend. Some of the money came from her clients, but I was making good money as a radio talk show host. I had a syndicated political talk show that was in the top 10 nationally and #1 in several markets. She agreed to reduce her time as a consultant and also agreed to finally start our family. Next chapter. I held our son Mikey in my arms as she watched the experts talk about her client and whether she could help her get rid of him. I hated that term, get rid of him. I never suspected her of having an affair. She cared too much about her reputation to cheat on me and never risked having bad news written about her. My problem was that she just worked too damn hard. Now, you may have noticed that I didn't say she loved me too much to cheat on me. I didn't believe that. Oh, I was sure she loved me, but more than anything, she loved her job. When she started consulting, she became a favorite of television talk shows when they needed legal analysis. There were times when she was on TV every day, and God, how she loved it. Are you upset? She'd ask when they switched to commercials. What do you think? Grumbled I. Mikey needs a change of clothes. I took my son to his room and left her not knowing how to act. And that was a good thing. I liked keeping her in suspense. She was a control freak, and I delighted when I could run a wrench in her gears. She decided to follow my lead, and while I was trying not to wet myself, she said, "It's going to be different. I'm just part of the team. I'm not the lead." I shrugged. That's right, baby. It's all fresh and dry. Mikey laughed when I tickled him, which made me smile. I blew a raspberry on his chubby tummy, which made him giggle even harder. Boyd, it's just a tax evasion case. They just need me to help pick a jury. Sure, I said as I walked past her into the family room. You're overreacting, she objected. No, I don't think so, I objected childishly. It's going to be very important to us. The name recognition alone. Not for us, she snarled, setting Mikey down in his playpen. What? Not for us, Alicia. It's good for you. I have a feeling it's going to finish us off. She shouted, Bullshit! I shook my head and grabbed my keys off the rack. So, your dinner is in the oven warming up. I'm going to go to the living room. Next chapter. David Bridges was the former governor of our home state. As soon as he announced his candidacy for the next presidential election, dirt was poured on him from all sides. He ended up being indicted for failing to report millions of dollars on his tax return that he allegedly received from some foreign company for some unknown reason, as well as a bunch of election interference charges related to his last run for governor. It would be an interesting trial. I just didn't want my wife practicing law again. I lit my Davidoff Churchill in a private room of a nice cigar lounge next to my studio. There were a few smokers there, but without saying hello, we left each other alone unless we were invited to join someone. Even though I was a celebrity, almost everyone was used to me showing up there a few times a week. The novelty of having Boyd Baxter, radio host, as a regular visitor quickly wore off. Boyd, help yourself to my scotch. A gentleman I recognized but couldn't remember his name addressed me. Thanks. I waved my hand and poured a healthy glass from the decanter on the table in front of him. I've seen the news. I suppose you could use a good belt? He added. Yeah, you noticed, right? I said before offering him an airy toast and heading to the most neglected corner of the room. I took a long puff and exhaled deeply. I wondered briefly if I'd overreacted, but concluded that I hadn't. I had filed for divorce because she was working too hard when she had important things to do. I only agreed to take her back after I promised to quit. I didn't feel guilty about that condition. She had a decade of successful work at the highest level under her belt, and I wanted to have children while we still could. And then she took on another big case without asking my opinion. Yeah, that was a slap in the face I didn't expect. Hell, I might have agreed, but probably not if she had asked. I'd still want to be involved in the decision. My attention was drawn to the television at the other end of the room. It was showing Alicia with a wide smile again. I saw the picture behind her and realized she was in our living room. I hoped Mikey would start crying. She was devouring these presenters. She manipulated them into believing she had answered their questions, but she didn't give them what they wanted. It was masterful. Then the presenter, who was a golf buddy of mine, asked, "Is your husband going to file for divorce again?" "Excuse me?" Alicia asked, shocked. "Well, a condition of the termination of your husband's divorce proceedings was that you would no longer take clients to court hearings. That seems to violate your agreement." I texted him, "I owe you a bottle of Pappy Van Winkle for that ambush. I assure you my husband is in full agreement with my career decisions." She was excited and I liked it. "No, I don't agree," I said out loud, making the guys who knew it was my wife laugh. A few seconds later, my phone rang. "Boyd, this is Dana Collins from The Times. Can I ask you some questions and get your reaction to your wife breaking your agreement?" "Hi, Dana. We haven't seen each other in a while. We should have lunch together. Maybe you'll come on the show again." She replied, "I'd love to. How about those questions?" "No, but I'll give you a statement." "Okay." I was completely dumbfounded. "Perhaps that will be the headline of my article. Do you have anything to add? A backstory, perhaps?" "No. Look, she hasn't done anything to stir up old issues yet. We're happily in love." "Thanks, Boyd. I'll see you soon." Dana was a hot newcomer to the news world. I'd invited her on my show a few times as a favor to her boss. He and I had a mutually beneficial arrangement. The phone rang again and I turned it off. I knew I'd have no peace of mind otherwise. The media vultures were circling, especially since I was one of them. Next chapter. "Things won't be the same anymore," Alicia said when I walked into our bedroom that night. "Whether it is or not," I replied, trying not to look at her, "you know what the stakes are. Things are different now. We have Mikey." I laughed. "If you think the fact that we have a son is going to stop me from wanting to have fun with a wife who doesn't put her career first, you're screwed. If you go back to your old habits, you'll find yourself out the door." "Baby, we've gone too far. I don't want to fight." "Alicia, the time to discuss this was before you got a job. Now we're in the breakup stage." "We'll be fine, you'll see. Now go to bed. I want to show you how much I love you." I decided to take advantage of my wife while I still had the opportunity. No, before she fell asleep, she managed to tell me that she loved me. I wonder how she'll feel about me in the morning. Next chapter. "You son of a bitch!" she screamed when I walked into the kitchen the next morning. "Completely blind?" I interrupted her. "It's true." "You shouldn't have told them that," she shouted. I shrugged. "It's a done deal. It'll be talked about all day, Boyd." I laughed. "At least they won't be talking about your client for a change." Now, her client had been talked about on the news programs for weeks before and every day after the arraignment. I kissed her on the cheek and decided to grab coffee and breakfast on the way to work so I wouldn't have to experience any more of her anger. I wondered how long it would be before she started working 16 hours a day again. "We're not done discussing this," she shouted back at me. I knew we weren't. I got to my studio and chaos reigned. Calls were answered by a young college student, a sound engineer, a technician willing to do anything, and a producer working with me. I preferred to do my own research, so I didn't have a team of people reading the news for me like some anchors. Jesus, Boyd, the phones are ringing off the hook today. I held out her coffee and said, "Turn the ringer off, Missy. Let them go to voicemail and you can screen out the important calls for me to call back." "Thanks, boss. That'll help." I walked into my office and saw my producer already waiting for me. "Morning, Boyd?" Rose asked. "Just fine, Rosie. What do we have today?" It's hard to avoid the Bridges story, especially since you're involved in it now. I'm not involved, my wife is. Same thing. Invite Dana Collins on the program. We'll talk about it and I'll let her give me some comments, but let her know it won't be an interview. Yeah, I read her article this morning. I swear that woman is partial to your wife. I laughed. No, she's in love with me. I overheard her talking to someone once. I'm going to use that to my advantage. Don't let the poor girl down, Boyd. I expected this town to chew her up and spit her out a couple years ago. Hey, never underestimate a farmer's daughter. She's tough as nails. Okay, I'll call her and set it up. Thanks, Rose. Also see if Dan Naranja can make it. I liked what he did to my wife on his show last night. It's good to have friends, isn't it? You know it is. Next chapter. All right, Boyd. You're live. 5, 4, 3, 2. Rose pointed at me, and the scoreboard lit up on the air. Good afternoon, Radioland. I'm your handsome host, Boyd Baxter, and in the studio with me is Dana Collins from The Times. Hi, Dana. Hi, Boyd. I'm happy to be here today, especially considering what's going on with your wife. She smirked, and I shook my head. She put on a short skirt and crossed her legs, giving me a nice view of her stockinged top. I loved beautiful legs, especially those covered in black nylons. Yes, I thought you'd mention that. Yes, my wife has agreed to join David Bridges' legal team as jury consultant. She will no longer be representing clients in the courtroom. Jury consultant? Dana asked. Is that what she told you? I stared at her. She just hung her shoe on her foot and smiled. It seems your wife didn't tell you the whole truth. According to my sources in Bridges' camp, she's the new face of their legal team and will take the first chair at the defense table. I don't care what unnamed sources say. I never use them, I said with a shrug. She laughed. That's because you use stories written by people like me to fill your radio show with them. Wow, said I hotly. I'm not a journalist and never claimed to be. I just host a show where I give my opinion on the news of the day. She smiled and said, and the news of the day is that your wife retired and lied to you. Let's go to the phones, I said, so as not to burrow even deeper. I couldn't control the conversation anymore. Damn my legs. Line 1, go ahead, I said, and tried not to look at Dana as she crossed her legs the other way. I didn't lie to you. I'm just a jury consultant. My wife defended herself over the phone line on the speakers. Well, if it isn't my lovely wife, Alicia. Hello, darling. I'll be home on time tonight. We're having a pork roast for dinner. Dana replied, Hello, Mrs. Baxter. You know very well that my last name is Taylor. My wife didn't take my last name when we got married. She had already established a reputation and kept it for professional reasons. That's right, Dana said. Mrs. Taylor. Anyway, Alicia said, stop making up nonsense. I'm only on the legal team to help pick the jury. Well, you say that, Dana replied. All right, ladies, that's enough. Alicia, I'll talk to you at home. But, okay, next caller. Next chapter. Well, that was a nightmare, I said after the show was over. I think it went great, Dana said as she put on her shoes. She took them off in the middle of the show to tease me. Bitch. You owe me, I muttered. She laughed. How about I take you out to dinner? Forget about your pig roast. The look in her eyes scared the hell out of me. I knew she liked me, but it was as if I was bait in the water and she was a hungry shark. I'll take a rain check, Dana. See ya. I said I got the hell out of there before I did something incredibly stupid and went out to dinner with a stunning redhead. When I got home, I buttered the roast, mixed the seasonings, and rubbed them all over the meat. 30 minutes later, I stuck the skillet in the oven. I fed Mikey his dinner and opened a beer. I couldn't believe it, but the question of who to believe, my wife or Dana's unnamed source, was driving me crazy. A little over 3 hours later, I had the table set, a bottle of fine Chardonnay in the ice bucket, and a perfectly cooked roast in front of me that needed to be butchered. Alicia wasn't home, but she was only half an hour late. I ate my salad while the clock ticked, and she was an hour late. I still hadn't gotten a call or a text. I put the roast back in the oven so it wouldn't get cold and made myself a martini, an hour and a half late. I fought the urge to call her. There was a battle to be fought, and I had to come out of it victorious. At 2:30 o'clock, I turned off the oven and went to dinner. Next chapter. The text came 3 minutes after my steak was served. Where are you? I put my phone down, sighed, and took another bite of the perfectly charred steak. There's something about steak cooked at a very high temperature that makes me a happy person. She wasn't going to spoil it. 5 minutes later, she texted me again with a question mark. I scooped up some creamed spinach and groaned when the flavors hit my tongue. They did well that night. Another 2 minutes passed and my phone rang. I sent it to voicemail because it pissed her off when people did that to her. I felt like I had won a battle she didn't know about. I was being mature, wasn't I? When my steak was finished, my wine glass was empty, and the last bits of spinach were removed from the bottom of my plate, I ignored the third phone call. The time was 9:30. When I pulled up to the garage of the house, she was standing in the doorway with her arms folded. I assumed she was upset, so I did my best to portray a scowl. Where the hell have you been and why are you ignoring my calls? She shouted. I laughed. You know the answer to those questions. Did you even bother to take the roast out of the oven? I walked into the kitchen and saw the roast lying in a skillet on top of the oven. You didn't eat. Gross. What did you eat at work? Pizza? Chinese? Chinese. Look, it won't always be like this. I don't care what you were doing. I care that you knew I was making dinner for us and didn't call me to tell me you'd be late for work. I'm sorry. You know how it is when... She paused. I replied, yeah, I know how it is. I filed for divorce because of it, remember? You always forget you have a husband at home. Only now you've got a kid at home too. Have you even noticed that Mikey's not home? I assumed he was with you. Wait, where is he? You've noticed now, haven't you? You're a shitty wife when you're busy doing stuff, and it turns out you're a shitty mom too. She slapped me. I rubbed my cheek and walked out of the kitchen. Boyd, wait, I'm sorry. I continued walking and walked out the front door. She kept calling out to me as I walked across the lawn to the neighbor's house. She was looking after Mikey. He was sleeping in the playpen she had set up in the living room for her baby, and didn't move as I carried him to my house. Alicia was silent, holding out her arms, asking for Mikey. That's not fair. You should have told me he was in the next house. I could have spent time with him before he woke up. Right, that's not fair. Of course, we have a little problem with you not telling me when you were going to be home. I was pissed at you. You and that whore were rude to me when I called your show. That's different. Don't call my show like that. I don't like surprises and we should always be on the same page. We're supposed to be husband and wife. She lied, Boyd. I'm not running this case. Time will tell, won't it? I'm going to bed. Next chapter. Ever heard of James Anderson? Dana asked me the next afternoon. She stopped me in the parking lot as I walked to my car after the show. I felt like Deep Throat with Woodward and Bernstein. No, should I have? I replied. He's the best behavioral analyst in the country. He's worked on almost every high-profile jury trial in the last 3 years. And my source tells me that David Bridges just hired him as a jury consultant. So what's your wife for then? What are you trying to do, Dana? Seriously? Are you trying to drive a wedge between me and my wife? She shrugged and replied, I'm just asking questions, Boyd. That's what I do. Then ask someone else and put it in your damn story. I opened my door, got in the car, and slammed it shut. The impact landed on my shoulder, making me cry out in pain. Very smoothly. She laughed and waved as I pulled away. In the rearview mirror, I noticed her sparkling nude stockings. At 6 o'clock, I gave Mikey his dinner and made a sandwich myself from the leftover roast, and it was quite tasty. Alicia was late again, and again I got no message or call. An hour later, she burst into the house through the garage door. Sorry, I was busy and couldn't call. When were you busy? I asked. What do you mean? I mean, you weren't physically restrained, right? You were in a meeting with other lawyers or reading some law book. At any time, you could have picked up your phone and sent me a message. Boyd, I said, I'm sorry. It's not going to stop with apologies this time, Alicia. You should spend time with your son before I put him to bed. I left the room and headed toward my basement man cave. I expected her to follow me with little Mikey, but she didn't. This disappointed me because I was pumped up and looking forward to the fight. At halftime of the Thursday night football game, I went to the kitchen to get a bottle of water. I was actually scouting out the surroundings for my wife. She was eating ice cream and reading something on her tablet when she realized I was there and looked up. We need to talk about this, Boyd. We don't have anything to talk about. You're back at work and back to your old problems. Hell, Unless you're lying to me, you were only supposed to be working on jury selection prep. She averted her gaze and for the first time didn't deny that she was lying about the extent of her involvement. I continued. Well, that's it then. I'm no longer going to play second fiddle to your work. I'll update the divorce papers and file them this week. Damn it, Boyd. We're not getting a divorce. I keep telling you things aren't the way they used to be. That's right. 2 days on the job and you've already been late twice and haven't called. It's like deja vu. It's just the beginning. You'll see, things will be different. I have a lot of catching up to do for this case. What? You're supposed to be advising them on jury selection. You don't understand, Boyd. A lot depends on it. Yeah? All right. I turned and walked away. She rushed after me and put her hand on my chest. I promise it won't be like before. Prove it. She wrapped her arms around me and started sobbing. Like a fool, I decided to give her a chance. It lasted 3 days. Next chapter. Never. It was a beautiful Sunday morning and I was playing peekaboo with Mikey when she walked into the room. I need to stop by the office for a few hours. I'll be home by noon. How about church and breakfast like we do every week? I asked. And she waved my question away. We'll go out to lunch instead. We can go to a Mexican restaurant we like at the Arboretum. No, I'll meet you there at noon, I said, daring her to be late. She kissed Mikey, then me, said goodbye and left the room. I looked at Mikey and said, Well, boy, what are you going to do, huh? He chuckled, and I went back to our game. At noon, I sat in the restaurant with Mikey and ordered a quesadilla, appetizer, and a Sprite. Mikey happily gorged himself on these little puff pastries that melted in his mouth. It was 12:30 and the waitress asked, Any news from the other side, or would you like to place an order? No, just the check, please. My baby is getting restless. The restaurant was full and many people were waiting. I realized they wanted me out of there. She smiled and patted my shoulder. I understand restless babies. I have 3 myself. She left and my phone rang. I ignored Alicia's call and she sent a text that read, I'm on my way. I'll be there in half an hour. Really, Mikey? I moaned. What am I supposed to do with her? Unsurprisingly, he didn't say anything back. I typed my response. I won't. I disconnected the phone, paid the check, and setting Mikey down, walked to my car. It was time to take action. I couldn't continue to let her lie to me and actually outsmart me. She wasn't going to make me look like the same fool I was the first time around. Sure, the difference was Mikey, but I was sure I could get custody of him with her shitty work schedule. A few minutes later, I walked through the kitchen and tossed my keys on the table. I set Mikey on the floor, and he rushed like a wind-up car to the family room where his toys were. As I followed him, the house phone rang, but I ignored it. He loved being in his playpen, and as he made his way into the family room, he climbed onto the netting. So someone wants to play in their baby prison, huh? Okay, buddy. As I sat him down, the phone rang again. Mom's gonna be mad, right? I asked. He chuckled, grabbed his VCR and said, Mikey, someone said a long time ago, never interfere with your enemy when he makes a mistake. And Mom keeps making mistakes. All I heard him look up and say was, the cow says, moo. Have fun, buddy, I said before tickling his side, eliciting a round of laughter. For some reason, I was reminded of Robert Plant's exclamation, Does anyone remember laughter? I made a mental note to listen to something from Zeppelin later. I opened my beer, sat down on the couch next to my son, and turned on my cell phone. I had a few voicemails from my wife and deleted them without listening. I was sure she would do it again when she walked in the door. There were several messages from Dana Collins saying we needed to talk as soon as possible. I, of course, ignored those as well. Half an hour passed and I was already drinking my second beer when she walked into the kitchen. I noticed that her hair was gathered into a ponytail, which was completely different than it had been in the morning. I raised my hand to stop her screaming, which was clearly headed in my direction. Mikey's asleep. I nodded toward the playpen where he was snoring like an angel. He should be in his crib. I agreed and let her carry him into the bedroom. While she did that, I got in the car and headed for the cigar lounge. Yeah, I know. I acted like a wuss by running away from the argument, but in my opinion, at that point the argument was unnecessary. My marriage was practically over. She chose the job over us. Next chapter. I was reading an article about bridges with my back to the door when I heard a voice from behind me say, "You're not hard to find, Boyd. If I tried to hide Dana, I wouldn't be here." Not that. She walked in front of me to one of the leather chairs on the other side of the small table. "Have you tried this one yet?" she asked, and showed me the cigar. It was a good choice. "No, but it's highly rated." "Yeah, that's what Nick said." No. Nick was the owner of the salon and was always quick to make recommendations, especially for a beautiful woman. That explained how she'd gotten into a closed private salon. Dana took the lighter from me and caught my eye on her legs. Naked for a change, they still looked amazing. She must have put lotion on them recently because they were shiny and looked moist. "You're too easy, Boyd," she teased and crossed her legs the other way. I took a drag on my cigar and roughly released the smoke in her direction. "What do you want, Dana? I'm trying to relax here." She frowned for a moment and there was sadness in her eyes before she said, "I have some bad news. It's going to be front page news tomorrow, but I wanted to tell you in person before the shit hits the fan." She put the phone down on the table and smirked when I peeked under her blouse. "What am I looking for?" "The video's already recorded. Just watch it." She took a puff on her cigar and coughed. I stopped in the middle of my laughter when I turned on the video on her phone. It showed my wife and David Bridges kissing in the office. I threw the phone on the desk and sat back down. "I'm sorry, Boyd. I'm sorry, but worse things happen." "Why would you be sorry? You've got the story of the year, and since when do you care about collateral damage?" "It's never been this close to me," she whispered. I sighed. "You know what the worst part of all this is?" She shook her head, and I tried not to cry. I had to look away. That asshole hasn't even had a week to get to her. He had affairs with 2 other women on his legal team. I shrugged and took another puff. Like it mattered. I was going to get a divorce anyway. That just eliminates any chance of getting her back. A smile flashed across Dana's face, but immediately faded. I think she would have loved the breakup of my marriage. She probably thought it would set me up so she could come and comfort my broken heart. "Send me that video, please." "I can't do that, Boyd. This story isn't—" "Screw your story!" I shouted and slammed my hand on the table. "It's my goddamn marriage." I stood up and silently apologized to a few guys in the room. "Fine," she said, backing away without a fight. "Just don't make it public." I snorted. I walked over to my locker and pulled out a bottle of 25-year-old Macallan's single malt whiskey. If I ever needed a drink, it was now. I poured 2 healthy glasses and sat back down. Dana took one of the glasses without asking, and I lit the cigar again. "Thanks," she said, taking a sip. From the way she tried to hide her displeasure, I realized she wasn't drinking much whiskey. Honestly, I never thought she'd cheat on me. I always thought she wouldn't risk her reputation like that. He's the one, you know? He's a known woman hunter. We just won't be able to get any hard evidence. No, that's on her conscience. So she could have fun with him in his office for a week? No, she was looking for him. How did you get that video in the first place? Installing a camera like that is a felony, so we'll just assume it wasn't me, okay? We'll just say it was an anonymous source and leave it at that. Her smirk gave away her words, but I wasn't going to elaborate on that. Sure, whatever you say. I turned on my phone to save the video to the cloud, and then I got a text from Alicia. "You need to come home so we can talk." I groaned and typed, "No need to talk. We're done here. You can entertain Bridges all you want. Have fun with the press tomorrow." I turned the phone off and watched as Dana threw her head back and took a long puff on her cigar. There was something interesting about a woman smoking a cigar. "Wife?" she asked. I nodded and sipped my whiskey. I said, "I wished her good luck with the press tomorrow. She'll think you came to me with the story. I'm sure you'll testify that I wasn't your anonymous source." "Tomorrow is going to be a shit show for you," she warned. "Yeah, I know. I'm totally screwed either way, so I'm going to do what I do every day. Chew bubblegum and kick ass." "And you're out of gum? Look at your knowledge of shitty 80s movies." She laughed and said, "It's a cult classic, dude." After another hour of small talk, my cigar ran out. If I thought she'd want one, I would have bought us a couple more just to keep sneaking peeks at her, but it was time to leave. "Buckle up, Boyd. And I really meant it when I said I was sorry. You're a good guy and you don't deserve this." "Yeah, well, it is what it is." We'll talk later, I guess. I decided to go to the hotel. I didn't want to deal with my soon-to-be ex-wife until I had to, and I figured that would happen the next day when all of this came to light. Next chapter. I woke up at 6 and turned on the news. The shit show had already started and it was on every channel. I brewed a cup of shitty hotel coffee and started to shower. I went to the store and bought clothes and toiletries for the hotel stay. I had no idea if and when I would be back home, so I prepared for the week. The hot water was nice, even without a decent head, but it didn't matter. Shitty water pressure was the least of my problems. After my shower, I turned on my phone and ignored all the messages. I texted Rose, "I'm not having a live show tonight. Find a guest host or tape the show." She replied, "I saw the news. Anyway, I'm sorry." The phone rang and of course it was Alicia. I ignored it and turned up the volume on the TV. The anchor said, "We have breaking news. Following the Times report of David Bridges' affair with his attorney Alicia Taylor, a video has surfaced. We warn you that it is very graphic." I watched the video of them kissing. After that, thankfully, the video cut off and the co-host said, "This contradicts Governor Bridges' claim that there was nothing romantic between him and his attorney. We have reached out to Alicia Taylor for comment, but have yet to receive a response." I decided to read the messages and see exactly what my wife's excuse was. "What are you talking about? I'm not having sex with David. Stop being an ass and come home." The ones that came the next morning sang a different tune. "That's a lie. We're not having an affair. Boyd, please call me. I swear to you, it's a lie. I love you." She must have been watching TV because the next message read, "We just kissed. That's all, and it was a mistake." I shook my head and replied to that. "I know there's more to that video. You got caught and we're done." She called again and again. I disconnected the call and watched the experts speak out about Bridges and his many alleged affairs. Surprisingly, they were focusing more on him rather than my soon-to-be ex, which even pleased me. I figured the less her name was mentioned, the less they would mention mine. I checked my voicemail. There were a few calls from Alicia, but the rest were from news stations that wanted me to comment. For a split second, I thought about getting on one of the shows so they would get my comment and leave me alone, but I knew better. In the end, it was better for me to stay silent. I did what all abusive husbands do, divided our assets, canceled our joint credit cards, and arranged for an attorney to update and finalize the paperwork. I got full custody of the child because she was no longer at home. He was confident that I had a good chance of getting at least primary custody if we lived together, and felt that evidence of an affair could be used to avoid counseling or time requirements if irreconcilable differences were involved. I was uncomfortable, but satisfied that I had put a stop to my false marriage. It was obvious that she loved her job more than she loved me, and it was more than obvious that she didn't love me enough not to cheat on me. Good riddance. I turned on the home security system on my phone and saw that she was sitting on the couch with a sleeping Mikey crying. I didn't know if she was crying because of me and the loss of our marriage or because she had made a shit show out of her blessed career. I tried to think of ways to get back at Bridges. There was a lot of public humiliation and all the things his wife was going to do to him, but none of it was coming from me. I felt I had to do something to keep my man card. In the end, I decided it was a stupid idea. He had a whole entourage and there was no way I could get close to him. Even if I could, they'd eventually grab me and either shoot me or beat the shit out of me. I'd have to resign myself to the fact that karma wouldn't suit him. Maybe he'll end up with Alicia. That would serve him right. Next chapter. The next day went the same way, except I had a show to attend. Rose was on her usual behavior, and the office wasn't too noisy. Unless you counted the 20 reporters standing in front of my building. Entering from the secure parking lot allowed me to avoid them and get to the office safely. Rose said, "Boyd, your buddy at the Times says he won't mention your name in the articles if you let Dana come on the show again." I threw up my hands and groaned. "Are you kidding me? What the hell difference does it make? God, her being on the show is probably even worse. I can't invite her and not talk about her story." "And how are you going to avoid talking about her? After all, it's the highest profile story of the year." "It's my show. I can talk and not talk about what I want to talk about." "Of course," she said, rolling her eyes, "as long as the sponsors aren't upset that you're being a wimp." She was right, of course. I got calls from the syndication company and sometimes directly from the sponsors if they were annoyed. Such is life in radio. Okay, Dana can come in, but tell her to be polite. I have a long memory. Oh, if you give her a chance, she'll be very polite to you, Boyd. She laughed and walked away. With Dana on the show, it was difficult. I couldn't control the narrative, and I certainly couldn't control her reporter's black language. She pressured me and danced around the subject of my wife until I indirectly gave her an answer to every question I didn't want to answer. An hour later, I put my headphones over my ears and watched Dana do the same thing with a smile. The only difference was she crossed her legs, which made the bottom of her skirt right up a couple more inches, while I wasn't wearing a skirt. I saw the notebook in front of her and asked, "Is this a list of questions?" She giggled sweetly and replied, "Of course not. I wouldn't dare come on your show with a list of questions." Rose started the countdown to air and Dana continued. "Besides, I know a lot more than you do. I'm not interested in you anymore. Well, professionally, that is." 3, 2, 1. The opening music began and I took a deep breath. "And good afternoon, Radioland," I began. "This is your handsome host, Boyd Baxter, and joining me in the studio today is Dana Collins from The Times. How's it going, Dana?" "Great. Thanks for having me on, Boyd." "It's always a pleasure. So, Congress is a mess, as usual. Any word on what's going on with our favorite monkeys trying to figure out how to pass a budget?" "Same old, same old. The defense hawks want their own. The hard right wants to cut everything. The hard left wants to spend everything, and the middle wants their piece of the pie for all their favorite projects. Nobody agrees on anything. And if Congress were an expressway, it would be like Los Angeles on a bad day." "You know what they say, Dana? The opposite of pro is con, so the opposite of progress is Congress." She laughed and let out a cute snort. "Oh my God, I can't believe I snorted on the radio," she moaned. "Next trick, I'll make milk flow out of your nose. How are politicians like diapers? They both need to be changed regularly for the same reason." She shook her head. "Okay, that was bad. Let's talk on the phone. On line 1 is Doug from Springfield. What's going on in Doug's world today?" "Hi, Boyd. I like your show. Sorry to hear about your wife." "Yeah, me too. Boyd, what can we do to fix our broken system? Something has to change in this swamp you call Washington. Term limits and an audit of their assets before and after, Doug. Maybe then, when politicians aren't traveling to Washington to line their pockets, some real work will emerge." Dana asked, "Do you think that's going to happen, Boyd?" "No, no politician on either side of the aisle will vote for it. Some will say they support it, but they know it will never happen because it will never come up for a vote." She agreed and said, "Guys like David Bridges think they can get away with anything they want. They think they're invincible." I flinched when she mentioned him but didn't stop her. She continued, "They crave power and wealth. They crave the attention they get from their yes men and no men falling all over themselves to be the first to agree with them and tell them how wonderful they are. They run for high office and then have affairs. It's disgusting." "Tell us how you really feel," I grinned. "I apologize if I took your words too personally," she softened. "That's just the way it is. My wife is a cheating whore. What am I supposed to do but lose money on her and lawyers?" A quick smile flashed across her face, but she immediately held it back. "Anyway, at number 6 is Annie from Long Island. What's on your mind, Annie?" "Oh, Boyd, I love having Miss Collins on your show. You kids have such cute chemistry." I laughed. "I'm like a pinch of salt, Annie. I go well with everything." Dana rolled her eyes and once again couldn't hide her smile. "Do you have a question, dear Annie?" "Yes, it's an easy question, but it's for Miss Collins. Young lady, do you want to be a mother?" The proverbial WTF expression appeared on Dana's face, and she threw her hands up in the air. "That's a great question, Annie. Politics and my wife are boring." "What's the answer, Dana?" "Also, Annie, you can't see it, but her face is bright red right now." "I love kids," Dana replied, avoiding the question as much as the politicians she was covering. Annie chirped, "You better, because Boyd needs to think about that adorable boy." "Okay," I interrupted, ending the conversation. "We love you, Annie. Thanks for the call. Looks like it's time to pay the bills. We'll be right back." "Oh my God," Dana exclaimed. "This is going to be a fun day," I moaned. Rose jabbed her finger at us twice like it was a great radio show. Maybe it was, but I didn't feel all that great. 3 hours later, I said, "And see you tomorrow. Don't change." The on-air display turned off and I tossed my headphones on the table. Dana carefully hung hers on a hook across the table. "Well, that was something," she said. "I didn't expect to get roasted by little old ladies tonight, that's for sure." "Hey, those little old ladies love me. I'm very popular at septuagenarian book clubs." She giggled. "I'm sure they're your bread and butter." "Careful. They read the papers, too. They'll start going through your comments and letters." "Do I want to be a mother? What the hell kind of question is that?" I laughed, tucking the notebooks into my bag. "It's a valid question, and don't think I didn't notice that you didn't answer it." I glared at her and she frowned. "I don't see myself as a mother. I love kids, I really do. It's just that with this job, I don't see how I can find the time." Suddenly she was saddened and said, "God forgive me. I already have everything." "Don't worry about it," I said, interrupting her. "I'll tell you, kids aren't so bad. I'm going to pick mine up from daycare right now and play in the trucks." "How can you be so calm, Boyd? Your marriage is falling apart and you're acting like it's just another Tuesday." "What do you want me to do? I can't cower in a corner and cry. I have a child, a job. I have to keep myself together so everything around me stays in one piece. I'm holding myself together and getting on with my life, Dana. What else can I do?" "I don't know. I guess I was expecting more emotion." I laughed. "Emotions are for pussies." I didn't really believe that, and she saw right through it. She touched my cheek and frowned. "I'm sorry, Dana. I have to go to daycare. Thanks for coming to the show again." "Anytime. If you need anything, call me. I mean it. Anything." She smiled, and I left. Next chapter. Life went on, and a month later I was sitting in my lawyer's office waiting for Alicia to speak. "Boyd, I'm so sorry. It was a mistake, and—" "Alicia, I don't want to hear it. If you think the reason we're divorcing is because you were having fun with that jerk a few days after we met, you're sorely mistaken." "Easy," the lawyer admonished me when I got a little flustered. "Listen, yes, your cheating is in itself grounds for divorce, but you forget that since I filed for divorce, you've gone back to your bad habits. You're late, you lie, and you put your work before our marriage and child. That's unacceptable to me, and you knew it. That's why you didn't talk to me about getting a job." "Boyd, it was just supposed to be jury consultations." Yeah, I heard that. But it wasn't, was it?" "No, I didn't think it was. You've caught the bug again. I'm sure you've cheated on me before. Just sign the papers. I'll be more than fair." "I want primary custody," she said, and tears rolled down her cheeks. I laughed, and my lawyer said, "Miss Taylor, that's not a good fit for us. My client won't give up primary custody, and with your work schedule, we're sure the judge will agree that it's in Michael's best interest and his well-being." "Damn it, Alicia. My investigator says you work 14 hours a day all week, and you haven't asked to see Mikey once since you moved in with him a few weeks ago." "Who are you kidding?" "I love him," she whispered. "I know you do. You just love your job more. You can see him whenever you want. I'm not going to be a bastard about it." "I love you, Boyd. I really do." "Yeah? You could have fooled me, baby." I walked out of the office and found out later that she had signed the papers. My marriage was over. 6 months later, Alicia came over to Mikey's for the weekend and I walked into the cigar lounge. "What's up, Nick?" I asked, walking up to the counter. "What's up, Boyd? A box of Montecristo #2 came for you. I put it in your locker." "Thanks. Are there a lot of people here today?" "No, just a few regulars and a hot chick who's been here a few times and just bought a season ticket." "Cool, see ya." I entered my code and walked into the VIP lounge. The smell of cedar and stale cigar smoke was heavenly. I nodded to the guys I'd seen earlier but didn't notice any hotties, so I headed to the locker to pick up my Cuban goodies. "Hey, Boyd. Long time no see." I smiled and pulled out my second cigar. "Hey, Dana. Want to try a Cuban tonight?" I closed the locker and held out the contraband to her. "Thanks," she said. "I'm kind of stalking you." "You're pretty shitty at it," I said as we walked over to a couple chairs. "I'm not hard to find and you have my phone numbers." She frowned, cutting the end off her cigar. "I'm a little nervous about this." She pulled an expensive lighter out of her purse and lit 6 inches of aged tobacco. I laughed and blew on the orange ring around the foot of my cigar. "What are you nervous about?" "I wanted to take you out to dinner." Oh, come on, I laughed. A woman who wears short skirts, crosses her legs, and clacks her heels to tease me is nervous about asking me to have dinner with her? You're full of shit. She shook her head. Very good, thank you. I nodded. Boyd, I never went on dates. I didn't have the time. Teasing you was easy. I never had a problem getting what I wanted from men and some women. I raised my eyebrows in surprise. I hadn't realized she was into women. Stop it, you pervert. I'm not into women. Okay, she can read minds. Noted. Look, I stuck my neck out and I don't want to get a bunch of shit for it. Yeah. She exhaled white smoke and asked, What? Yeah, I'll have dinner with you. You'll have dinner? She asked dumbly. Really? Do you think you're ugly or something? I asked. No, I don't. Like I said, I'm not used to going out a lot. Okay, let's get this over with and go across the street to that little Italian restaurant. Next chapter. After dinner, we were enjoying a glass of wine on my couch when I asked, So do you have time to go on a date with me now? Or am I some sort of one-night stand entertainment for you? She laughed. No, haven't you heard I don't work at the Times anymore? No, I must have missed it. I'm on television now. You know the show? You've been on it. It features some of our ladies on the couch with a guy or two. Oh, sure. I love that show. It's like eye candy for us leggy men. She laughed. I guess so. Although I did wear pantsuits twice last week. I changed the channel. We laughed together. And then she asked, You like my legs, don't you? Oh, don't start that who am I crap again. You know perfectly well that I like your feet. What about my feet? She asked, turning around and placing her feet in my lap. I shrugged and set the wine on the table. You're wearing jeans and socks tonight. Not the best outfit. I didn't expect to see you today. I had to go home and change for you. That won't be necessary. What about my face? Aren't I pretty? No, you're what we call an oily face. Butterface? She shrieked. Yes, you do. Everything looks beautiful except her face. Don't get mad, I'm just playing. You're an amazing woman. Well, that's a little better. She sipped her wine and asked, You wouldn't be offended if I asked you to take me into your bed? No, baby. I won't hold a grudge. I'll put it in you. She rolled her eyes and reproachfully remarked, You're ruining the mood, Mr. Comedian. Well, I'll have to fix that then. Let's go. I led her into my bedroom, kissed her on the forehead and asked, Do you want some? What do you mean? I mean, do you want to get used to it? I'm taking applications for a girl and you're the only applicant so far. She said, I'd really like that. I have more free time now. If I think about the long term, I'm ready to be a mom. Okay, I replied. But first we'll see how you do as a stepmom, okay? I laughed. I'm not cheating, she whispered. Me neither. I think with Dana, I've found a woman who cares more about her family than her job. Time will tell, but half the fun is in finding out. After all, if we knew what the future held, life would be boring as hell. Thanks for watching. Hope you enjoyed it. Subscribe to my channel and watch for the next video.